GM fam, is serving as a Uniswap V3 LP the greatest rug pull of all time? Competing threads paint a confusing picture. Let's dive in and see what we can learn. A few days ago, Alex at Breakpoint, a former high frequency trader, published a Dune dashboard which kicked off the controversy. Alex suggested that if you look at order flow toxicity on one of the more popular Uniswap pools, the net impact since August of last year has been losses, and depending on how you tally it, could be as high as $100 million worth of losses. Now, this is pretty rough. This is, again, one of Uniswap's most popular pools. So, Uniswap very quickly issued their own rebuttal. Uniswap said that Alex was not properly taking fees into account, and if you look at the fees that the LPs earned, in fact, it was not a $100 million loss, but as they claimed, $150 million gain. Now, this is, in and of itself, also fairly controversial. If you're a high frequency trader, the idea that you could just sit there passively and earn $150 million for doing nothing, that's awfully good to be true. So Alex now points to a separate thread by DeFi Guy, which suggests that Uniswap's analysis was in fact flawed. They said that they set the trade direction flag to 0 or 1, but it should be -1 to 1. This is essentially zeroing out half the trades. And when DeFi Guy made this correction, they found that the numbers were closer to Alex's original numbers. So you would think that this would be pretty good corroboration for Alex, the fact that two separate takes at this have both indicated -100 million. Now it's important to point out Alex has no particular animus towards Uniswap. They're not suggesting any kind of rug pull or anything. They're just suggesting that Uniswap should be clear about this and step up, offer corrections, maybe delete their initial thread if it's incorrect. Where do we stand on this? Now, of course, we're about the biggest curve maximalists around, so we're insanely biased, and you should not trust anyone, particularly people with heavy bias like me. But it's worth pointing out that a lot of the curve community, myself included, do seem to have this bias towards finding out what's true, even if it's not the best for our bags. Naga King is one such individual. Naga King has been instrumental in working out some of the mathematics behind optimizing the A parameter for different curve pools, as well as all the parameters for different curve V2 pools. And Naga King is calling into question some of the methodology behind Alex's initial research. Now, we went ahead and asked Naga King, because we're maximalists, is this working out against or for Uni? And Naga King is not quite sure. It just needs more research. And that's about where we come down on this. Everyone who is considering LPing into Uniswap should know that it's an active question whether or not it's actually useful. But we do want to broadly extrapolate some broader trends that you might figure out. So, from this whole incident, we've taken away a few lessons. The first of which is that concentrated liquidity is very tough for LPs, particularly passive LPs. If your goal is just to set money into a pool, forget it, and earn money, Uniswap V3 has some red flags you might want to look at. There may be ways of actually building out a Uniswap V3 strategy that's good for passive LPs, but we've not yet seen it. If you have seen it, please drop in the comments. We'd be interested in sharing it with our users. But for the time being, it's not necessarily the best place, and you might want to look elsewhere. There could be some tools and charts and dashboards that could actually help users to find this. And in fact, you could build it, which brings us to our next lesson, which is that several wrong takes is actually greater than the sum of each individual wrong take. And by that, we mean that a really amazing thing happens when you see these debates going on. So I might be a curve maximalist, you might be a Uniswap maximalist, but for a bystander just watching the debate, they can somewhat understand where the truth lies by analyzing the fight. So we believe that the information does not come from any one party, but it's from this debate. People can kind of look at the epicenter of the cloud of dust that gets kicked up and figure out that maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle and parse out whether different debaters are playing honestly or not. So we think that one of the most important things that can happen on social media is for these debates and for these collisions to happen. Another important lesson from this is that you can make a difference. And we mean this quite literally. The dashboards we're talking about to analyze LP positions, anyone can step up and do this. You might have a difficult time steering political thought, steering the influence of corporate propaganda, cultural debates, but there's so many crypto tokens out there and there's so few people actually subjecting them to scrutiny that you can just step up and start asking questions, start trying to summarize research on it, and very quickly achieve outsized influence within this particular sphere because not enough people are doing this. This is your opportunity. If you're a reply guy trying to figure out how to gain any potential influence in the space, try narrowing your focus to one underserved community, and you'll find that you quickly rise to the top. And finally, a useful lesson for life is to question everything. It's a rough way to go through life in some cases. Extreme skepticism might even make life impossible to live because society as we know it requires intermingling networks built on trust. Nonetheless, though, the basis of the scientific method is to question everything. Take experiments and try and replicate them, subject them to scrutiny, ask questions. If there's one lesson we've learned over the past several years, it's that the capability of lone researchers with a keyboard to strike at the truth is much better than, in some cases, well pedigreed and impeccably credentialed experts. This is you. You can do this. Obviously, this can be a bit rough because some of the fun in crypto is seeing people just turn their brain off and aping blindly into the latest doggy Ponzi scheme. But we do think that over the long run, you're going to find it much more effective if your strategy focuses on incrementally gaining exposure to projects that stand up to some scrutiny. So we definitely advise that you take this more skeptical approach to all of finance, not financial advice.